I didn't wake up scared. I woke up careful. The doctor was still talking when I opened my eyes, something about a mild concussion, temporary confusion, nothing serious. But I wasn't listening to him. I was watching them. My son stood too close to the bed, like he was waiting for something. My daughter wouldn't meet my eyes. And my nephew, he was smiling. Not fully, just for a second, but long enough for me to see it before he looked away. That's when I understood something was wrong. Not with me, with them. So when the nurse asked if I knew who they were, I hesitated, just enough. And then I said the one thing that changed everything. "I'm sorry, I don't think I recognize any of you." The silence that followed wasn't shock. It was something else, something heavier, like I had just given them permission to become who they really were. And in that moment, I made a decision I never thought I would make. If they were waiting for me to forget, I would let them believe I already had. When they discharged me from Edward Hospital that afternoon, the doctor didn't say anything unusual. Mild concussion, some dizziness, possible short-term memory disruption. He spoke like it was routine, like I would be fine in a few days. And maybe I would have been if I had actually lost my memory. But I hadn't. Not really. What I had lost was certainty. Because the moment I said I didn't recognize them, something shifted in that room. Not panic, not heartbreak, something quieter, something controlled. Jason insisted on driving me home himself, even though I told him I could manage a ride service. "It's not safe," he said too quickly, already reaching for my discharge papers before I finished speaking. Emily sat beside me in the back seat, her hand resting lightly on my arm, not holding, just placed there like she wanted it to be seen. She kept asking simple questions. "Are you comfortable? Do you remember the house?" Questions that sounded caring, but felt like tests. I answered carefully. Not wrong, not right, just uncertain enough to keep the illusion intact. The house looked the same when we pulled into the driveway. 2 stories, clean siding, the same oak tree Arthur planted years ago. Nothing had changed, but the way they moved inside it had. Jason didn't ask where I wanted to sit. He guided me straight to the couch like the decision had already been made. Emily went to the kitchen without asking, opening cabinets she hadn't touched in years as if she already knew where everything was. And that's when I noticed the first real detail. My desk drawer in the study wasn't fully closed, just slightly off, barely noticeable unless you were looking for it. I hadn't been looking for it before. I was now. "You should rest," Jason said, standing near the hallway, his eyes drifting not to me, but past me, toward the study. I followed his gaze for half a second, then let mine fall away like I had lost the thought. "Okay," I said softly. Later that evening, Emily made tea, chamomile, the same one I always drank before bed. She handed it to me with a small smile. "This usually helps you relax," she said. Usually. Not you like this. Usually meant she was reminding me of something or checking if I remembered it myself. I took a sip and nodded slowly. "It tastes familiar," I said. That seemed to reassure her. Jason stepped outside to take a call, but the glass door didn't close all the way. I wasn't trying to listen. I didn't need to. His voice carried just enough. "Yeah, it's worse than I thought," he said quietly. A pause. No, she didn't recognize me at all. Another pause. "We just need to figure out timing." Timing, not treatment, not recovery. Timing. I kept my expression still, my hand steady around the cup, because that one word told me more than anything else had so far. They weren't reacting, they were adjusting. When Jason came back inside, his tone was softer again, controlled. "You should get some sleep," he said. "We'll figure everything out tomorrow." Everything. I nodded like I didn't fully understand what that meant, but I did, because now there was a pattern. Jason was taking control of decisions. Emily was testing what I remembered, and neither of them had asked me what I wanted, not once. That night, I locked my bedroom door, not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly, the way you do when you don't want anyone to notice you've started paying attention. Then I sat on the edge of the bed and replayed every moment since the hospital. The hesitation, the looks, the questions, the word timing. And for the first time, I allowed myself to consider something I had been avoiding since I opened my eyes. What if they weren't just worried about me? What if they were waiting for something else entirely? I lay back slowly, staring at the ceiling, listening to the house settle into silence. It used to feel like home, safe, familiar, ours. But now it felt different. Not hostile. Not yet. Just watched, measured, like I wasn't the only one thinking ahead anymore. And if that was true, then I couldn't afford to be the only one pretending. The next morning, I made my first mistake on purpose. Jason found me standing in the laundry room holding a dish towel, staring at the washer like I couldn't remember what it was for. "Mom," he said carefully. I turned too slowly, let confusion settle into my face, then looked down at the towel in my hand. "I'm sorry," I said. "I thought I was making coffee." He didn't laugh. He didn't look concerned either. He looked relieved, and that was worse. "It's okay," he said softly, stepping closer. "Why don't I handle things for a while?" Handle things. There it was again. Not help, not support, control, disguised as patience. I nodded and let him guide me back toward the kitchen, but as we passed the study, I saw his eyes shift toward the door. Just a flicker. Fast, automatic. The kind of glance people make when they're checking whether something is still where they left it. Emily arrived an hour later carrying grocery bags I hadn't asked for. She moved through the kitchen with easy familiarity, putting things away, wiping counters that weren't dirty, opening drawers without hesitation. "You've always hated when the refrigerator gets too full," she said casually, placing yogurt on the top shelf. I looked at her and tilted my head. "Have I?" She smiled, but it tightened at the corners. "You used to organize everything." Used to. Another test. I opened the cabinet above the microwave and stared at the plates for a beat too long. "I don't remember where anything goes." Emily set down the milk and turned toward me slowly. "That's okay," she said. "You don't need to worry about that now." Worry about that now. The language had changed. It was no longer temporary confusion. It was a transfer of responsibility, one phrase at a time. By afternoon I knew two things. First, they were speaking more freely around me. Second, they still weren't saying the real thing out loud. That part came later. Jason had left his phone on the kitchen island when he stepped outside to meet a delivery driver. It lit up while I was sitting there pretending to read the same magazine page for 10 minutes. A message flashed across the screen from Emily. "Don't push too hard today. If she resists, wait." My pulse hit once, hard, but my face stayed blank. Not because I was calm, because now I knew. There was no misunderstanding left. This wasn't spontaneous concern, it was coordinated pressure. Jason came back inside before the screen dimmed. He picked up the phone, glanced at it, then at me. "You doing okay?" he asked. I let my eyes drift to the magazine in my lap. "I think so." He studied me for a second, then smiled the way people do when they believe they're being clever. "Good." That evening, after they both left, I called Howard Kessler from the landline in the upstairs hallway. Not my cell phone. Arthur had used Howard for years, and more importantly, Howard understood the difference between family conflict and financial vulnerability. "Clara," he said the moment he answered. "Is everything all right?" "No," I replied quietly, "but I need you to act like it is." He didn't interrupt. He just listened while I gave him the version stripped of emotion. The fall, the fake memory loss, the questions about paperwork, the text message, the shift in tone. When I finished, he was silent for a moment. "Do you believe they're trying to establish dependency?" he asked. "Yes." "Then you need documentation immediately," he said. "And you need it before they try to formalize anything." The next morning, I met him in his office 2 blocks off Jefferson Avenue while Jason thought I was at a follow-up appointment for post-concussion monitoring. Howard didn't waste time. He reviewed my estate file, verified that no existing power of attorney had been altered, and helped me draft written instructions restricting any future authority, unless requested directly by me in front of independent counsel. Then he said the one thing I had been thinking but hadn't wanted to admit. "If they believe you've lost capacity," he said carefully, "they may try to create a paper trail that says you can't live independently." I felt cold all at once. "Then I need proof before they do." Howard nodded. "Yes," he said. "And from this point on, assume every conversation is part of a setup." When I got home, Jason was already there, standing in my kitchen like he belonged in it more than I did. "How'd the appointment go?" he asked. I set my purse down slowly and gave him the answer he wanted. "The doctor said I should rest more." Jason nodded once, satisfied. "That makes sense," he said. Then his eyes moved toward the study again. This time I didn't feel fear. I felt certainty, because now I wasn't just watching a family grow concerned. I was watching them build a case. And once I understood that, every smile, every question, every act of kindness stopped feeling like care and started looking exactly like what it was: preparation. By the time they brought the paperwork into my living room, I already knew exactly what it was. Not because I had seen it before, but because I had watched them build toward it one conversation at a time. Jason stood near the coffee table holding a folder too carefully for something that was supposed to be routine. Emily sat beside me, close enough to guide, but not close enough to comfort. "We just want to make things easier for you," she said gently, her hand resting lightly on mine. Easier. That word again. I lowered my eyes to the folder without touching it. "What is it?" I asked softly. Jason stepped forward. It's just a temporary arrangement, he said. A limited power of attorney so we can help manage things while you recover. Limited, temporary, help. Every word chosen to sound harmless. I nodded slowly as if I was trying to understand. And if I don't sign? I asked. The room went still for half a second. Then Jason exhaled quietly. Then things could get complicated, he said. Not angry, not threatening, just factual. And that was enough. I picked up the pen, let it hover over the paper, then stopped. Not dramatically, just enough to break the rhythm. I'm tired, I said. Can we do this later? Emily's grip tightened slightly. It would really be better to take care of it now, she said. Now? Of course it would be. I set the pen down and leaned back against the couch. I think I'd like a little more time. Jason didn't argue. He just nodded once, slowly, like someone adjusting a plan in real time. Okay, he said. We'll revisit it soon. That word again. Soon. They left an hour later, the folder back in Jason's hands, but something had changed. Not in them, in me, because now I had what I needed. Not suspicion. Not instinct, evidence. The next morning, I asked them all to come over. Not just Jason and Emily, everyone. Jason arrived first, cautious but curious. Emily followed 10 minutes later, already trying to read my face before she even stepped fully inside. When Ethan walked in last, I saw it immediately. The difference? His posture was looser. His eyes weren't searching anymore. He didn't need to. He had already taken what he thought mattered. You said you wanted to talk, Jason said, standing in the center of the room. I nodded and gestured toward the couch. Sit. They hesitated, just for a second, then did. I stayed standing. That was the first thing they noticed. The second was my voice. I'm going to ask you something, I said calmly, and I want you to answer carefully. Emily's expression tightened. Okay, I looked at Jason. When did you decide I couldn't manage my own life? Silence. Not confusion. Not surprise. Silence that comes when the question is too accurate to deflect easily. That's not what this is, he said finally. Then what is it? I asked. He didn't answer. Emily tried instead. We're just trying to protect you, she said. I nodded slowly. From what? Another pause. Longer this time, because now there was nowhere left to hide the answer. I turned slightly toward Ethan. And you, I said. What exactly were you looking for in my study at 12:47 in the morning? His face changed instantly. Not guilt. Not yet. Calculation. I don't know what you're talking about, he said. I walked to the side table and picked up the small remote. That's okay, I replied. I do. I pressed a button. The screen lit up. The footage started without sound. The hallway. The door. Ethan stepping inside. Opening the drawer. Taking the envelope. Clear. Undeniable. No room for explanation. Emily covered her mouth. Jason stared at the screen like he was trying to process how far things had already gone. Ethan didn't move. Not even when the video ended. I turned the screen off and set the remote down. That envelope wasn't real, I said quietly. The account inside it doesn't exist. Now his expression cracked. Just slightly. Enough. But the bank inquiry did, I continued. Which means someone tried to use it. I let that settle before I said the next part. And I know it wasn't just you. Emily looked at me then. Really looked at me. And in that moment, she understood. Not what I was saying. What I had done. You never lost your memory, she said softly. It wasn't a question. I met her eyes. No, I said. I didn't. The room changed after that. Completely. Because now they weren't dealing with someone confused. They were dealing with someone who had been watching them the entire time. Jason ran a hand over his face. Clara, we were trying to help, he said. I shook my head once. No, I replied. You were preparing to take control. That's not fair, Emily said, but her voice didn't hold. Then explain the message, I said. Don't push too hard today. If she resists, wait. She went still. Ethan looked away. Jason didn't speak, because there was nothing left to defend. I walked to the coffee table and placed a second folder down. Everything is already locked, I said. Accounts, property, legal authority. No one makes decisions for me without my consent. Not now. Not later. Jason's expression hardened slightly. So that's it? He asked. You just shut us out? I looked at him. Not angry. Not emotional. Just clear. No, I said. You did that. Silence again. But this time it wasn't uncertain. It was final. I stepped back toward the hallway. Then paused just long enough to say the only thing that still mattered. I didn't lose my memory, I said quietly. I lost my trust. And then I walked away. Not to prove a point. Not to make a statement. Just to close a door I hadn't realized was already open.